Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Paddle Pod, your weekly podcast covering professional paddle, presented by Hugo and Gons. We're on to episode 97. As always, joined by my co-host Hugo here today. Hugo, it's great to have you on. How you doing?
I'm very well, thanks, Gons. Looking forward to chatting about paddle, as we always do. And to be honest, I think there's a lot of different things and a lot of different, results, shocking results, even the winners that probably people didn't expect. So, yeah, keen to get cracking as soon as possible.
Yeah, paddle's back, and what a way to come back to it because obviously we've had the break, which kind of was quite long to be honest. I did miss it, and then after this tournament, I feel like I would describe the tournament as like the tournament of upsets because we basically had upsets all the way throughout. Maybe not in the final. Maybe potentially people did expect Chingalan to be able to beat Cardona, but nonetheless, throughout the whole tournament, what shocking results. But maybe Hugo, I don't know if you want to get started with maybe should we talk about the final and kind of Chingalan's performance throughout the tournament? Obviously, they were the winners of the tournament and kind of maybe the only pair that didn't really suffer a shock defeat as such, at least from the top ranked pairs.
Yeah, no, I think obviously for this week has basically been a let's silence the critics, right? And that's what Chingalan have done. And to be honest, I think we probably have to include ourselves within those critics, definitely myself at the very least. You know, we were colloquially put hating on Chingalan as a pair and saying that Galán would probably have to look elsewhere. He really wanted to challenge for the number one spot. And then they go and win the tournament, beating Cardona and Augsburger, who had obviously previously beaten them this season. So, I think, yes, it's a huge kind of air balloon for Chingalan, particularly for Chingotto, given that a lot of the doubts and critics and concerns had come regarding his performances and what he could offer from an attacking perspective, as we've discussed, because defensively we know that he's one of the best players in the world. But hey, maybe this tournament means that Chingalan don't need that extra attacking spice because what really matters is the team, and the team is winning. This is their third tournament of the season. So maybe we can talk about that a little bit later on. But focusing on the final, I almost felt like it was two finals in one. It was the first set was one final, and then the second set was a completely different story. I think the first set was very, very even. Cardona and Augsburger were broken twice, but then managed to break back immediately both times, which when I was watching it, I felt, ooh, this kind of shows what we were saying about Chingalan, that they aren't being as dominant and as kind of lethal as they usually are. Getting broken back after having broken immediately twice kind of shows a bit of a kind of a weaker side to the strength of your game. But then, as soon as they won the tiebreak, which, by the way, they played really, really well, the second set was just a complete spanking, really, to put it bluntly. I thought that Cardona, particularly in the first set, struggled in the tiebreak. I think he made some key mistakes, kind of repeating what we'd seen when he was playing with Paquito towards the end of last year. I think when the key moments of key matches against the top pairs happened, he was the one kind of letting the pair down. He's so young, so it's normal that pressure moments are going to affect him more. But I didn't have that feeling with Augsburger. What I would say is that then in the second set, Augsburger I think his mentality let him down a little bit. I think he was trying to probably play too many balls, going for a few too many smashes and trying to take a bit of that aerial space from Cardona because he wasn't really trusting his partner. And that led to at least one break, if I'm not mistaken, maybe both breaks. So, yeah, I think mentally, Cardona and Augsburger really showed why this is their first final, and they have to work a lot on their strength and their mentality as a pair to really challenge the big boys in finals, particularly. But hey, they had an unbelievable week. We can talk about their encounter with Stupa and Lebrón later on. But yeah, Gons, what were your kind of initial thoughts on the final?
No, I very much agree with you. Kind of just want to highlight how well both Chingotto and Galán played. I thought that, to be honest, both of them on equal measure. I thought there were moments where Galán was absolutely brilliant. Like he basically won every single ball he touched. But then there were moments as well where I thought Chingotto was just like pulling his way and kind of driving the pair forward. So, hats off to them, as you said. Maybe we'd been a bit harsh with them, and now it seems, well, not only us, obviously. I think a lot of people were kind of asking Galán like to change, and now it seems like they've answered and they've done it, very comprehensively. So fair play to them. let's just put it this way as well. Maybe their draw wasn't as hard as the other side, where Augsburger and Cardona and obviously Lebrón and Stupa. But still, I mean, at the end of the day, you can really only play what's in front of you, and the fact that they're easy, like their matches towards the final. I mean, they were so dominant in all of them. They barely gave any chances to their opponents. So the fact that they're able to put like other opponents' way, sorry, that easy, I think it just shows as well how consistent and how strong they are as a pair. So fair play to them. I mean, it's so strange because you see them play how they played this tournament, and especially in the final, and basically how they play against every other pair except Coello and Tapia. And then it just shocks you how against Coello and Tapia they're like completely different. And I don't know if now it has kind of maybe become even like a mental thing where it's not only the fact that they're obviously playing against Coello and Tapia, but the fact that they're maybe a bit more blocked mentally and they don't know what to do. Because when you see them play how they played yesterday, I mean, I thought Galán's tournament overall, his semi-final against Tello and Dineno, the way basically every ball he touched, every smash was like on point, and he was so determined. And so it's just like crazy to see how in when they face Coello and Tapia, it just seems like they transform to a completely different pair. But I mean, I thought they were absolutely sensational, and obviously, hopefully, this gives them, the reassurance they need. And what I thought as well was obviously they played against Cardona, who are kind of the prototype pair of Coello and Tapia. Obviously, not as talented right now, and they don't play as well in the key moments as Coello and Tapia do. Obviously, they're still relatively young. So in a way, maybe they find comfort in the fact that hey, we've beaten them, which is basically like a Coello, like playing against Coello and Tapia in a way. And hopefully, in their minds, this kind of gives them comfort to let's try, we can still do it against Coello and Tapia, right? I think that's a positive that they've got to take. Obviously, with the caveat that Cardona and Augsburger are still very much a raw product. They're not obviously as polished as Coello and Tapia. But, Chingotto, I thought as well, from an offensive point of view, I think he added that little kind of extra spice that maybe Galán was like asking him to do, especially when there are a couple of short lobs. I mean, he didn't step back and then try to play like a víbora. He went for his smash, and I mean, he smashed really well. I don't know his efficiency, but I mean, I would say that he was 100%. Maybe he had like 6 or 7 smashes and he had 100% effectiveness on them. So I thought that was kind of good and kind of a step forward that he needs to take if they obviously want to be a bit more offensive and kind of challenge Coello and Tapia. And then on Cardona's Burger side, I think as you mentioned, showed incredible resilience at the beginning in the first set, kind of saving 6 set points if I'm not mistaken, obviously taking it to the tiebreak. But then after that, it just seemed to collapse. And like you said, I felt like in the tiebreak they were targeting Cardona quite a bit, and Augsburger was kind of put in a nevera, like he barely touched the ball. And I think one of the points, if I'm not mistaken, was maybe he tried to go for a smash on Cardona's side, but he kind of like rushed it. And then I think, if I'm not mistaken, he kind of sold himself, and Galán was able to tuck it away. Cuatro. So it just kind of shows, I mean, that they still got to develop that side. I mean, obviously, incredible run. And really, it's amazing how they are right now challenging every pair. Like, I mean, I think we spoke about this offline, but for us, they're arguably the fourth best pair at the moment, even though their current ranking doesn't say that they are. But they are playing like it, and hopefully this is like obviously a learning step, so they can improve and get better and play better in the more important moments. But nothing to take away from them, because the run was incredible, and we'll see. The second set just seemed like a complete collapse. I also felt like in the second set, it felt like they were still hanging on to the first set, like in so many of the changeovers, even when the score was like 4-1 or something, they were still talking about how they had done in the first set and stuff. So it just felt like mentally the second set they just weren't there, and Galán and Chingotto, I think, just took the chance and the opportunity to really run away with it.
No, I mean, I totally agree. I think obviously we've got to be very positive with Cardona and Augsburger, as
No,
you just
100%.
said. If I'm not mistaken, they are the only pair that have beaten all the top 3 pairs, right? So Stupa, Lebrón, Chingalan and Coello and Tapia this season. So it shows that, yeah, I mean, in my eyes, they are the 4th best pair. And I mean, even though the seeding doesn't show that. And also they've had really tough draws. I mean, they've basically faced Coello and Tapia, or projectedly faced Coello and Tapia in the quarterfinals for the last like 4 tournaments in a row, it feels like. And also they'll be doing that this week in Argentina as well, because they're in Stupa and Lebrón quarter. So it would be, again, Stupa and Lebrón in the quarterfinals, Coello and Tapia in the semifinals, Chingalan in the final. So, yeah, I mean, credit to Juan as well. We've seen how important he is on the bench. But yeah, I mean, moving on to, well, not moving on, but focusing specifically on Chingotto, Chingalan, their future. Do you think this is, I mean, how should I put it? Do you think this gives them enough breathing space to say we won't split until the end of the season? Or do you think they need to, I don't know, how many tournaments do they need to win in the next few tournaments to do it? Obviously, we've discussed this topic a lot, but yeah, I mean, just very quickly, I would say that even though it's a great result, they need to beat Coello and Tapia to believe in themselves and their future and their expectations to reach the number one again. I don't know whether you agree.
So, I mean, if, let's say, in the next 4 or 5 tournaments, Chingalan, the draws continue, you know, how they're being or whatever, right? At the end of the day, Chingalan don't face Coello and Tapia, let's say 3 out of the next 5 tournaments, because for whatever reason, Coello and Tapia, they haven't made it to the final, or they just, you know, they drop off before Chingalan and Chingalan continue to win, then obviously I think that still, you know, that will give them comfort, and maybe they don't see a reason to split. I don't see that as likely. I think that they will eventually meet, and in that case, like you said, I mean, I just think that they need a convincing win. I think they need a win. They need to beat them, because they've shown that they can beat every other pair. Like, they don't have any problems with any other players. It's just Coello and Tapia where they haven't been able to beat them since basically a year now. If I'm not mistaken, the last time they meet them was in the Genova P, which was, I mean, that was like one of the biggest spankings we've seen, I think. So since then, they've lost all matches. I don't know how many there are, but I think it's maybe like 10 or 11. So, you know, I think that they need that win against them, even if it's just one. Maybe if it's just one, that gives you enough confidence to say like, hey, you know, we've done it. We could definitely do it again. So yeah, that's my view. Even though this is obviously very nice and obviously great to win tournament for the morale and everything, I still feel like they need that win against Coello and Tapia.
No, I mean, yeah, I agree. I mean, so maybe it's probably a good time to move on to the other big highlight of the tournament, which is obviously Coello and Tapia losing in the quarterfinals against in form Juanlu Esbrí and Jose Antonio Diestro. Now, who would have said
what run?
Yeah, what a run. I mean, who else did they knock out? I was trying to think about it.
Livacan Garrido first round, Paquito Vera, if I'm not mistaken. I think Coello and Tapia. I mean, what a run.
Unreal. I mean, unreal. I think, well, look, going into the match, I did feel that Coello and Tapia made too many mistakes to really challenge for winning that match, particularly given how well Esbrí and Diestro were playing. Because, well, you and I have discussed this offline, right? Coello, particularly, so many unforced errors from a player that rarely produces double-digit unforced errors in a match. So I think he struggled a lot. And with his smash again, I think he saw those ghosts that we saw towards, well, some points during last season where he was struggling with his smash and he was getting found out. And I think Tapia was getting a little bit frustrated seeing that on court, and he didn't know how to react. I felt that he played better than Coello, but still too many enforced errors. Potentially his smash isn't being as effective as it was being towards the start of this season. I'm seeing that he is also getting found out with his smash, but I think we have to give a lot of credit to Esbrí and Diestro. I thought they were sensational, honestly. I think they could have beaten any pair that day, and obviously their run shows that they have pretty much beaten any pair that they've played at, well, until they made the semi-finals. Yeah, Gons, what do you think led Coello and Tapia to lose? What do you think the reason was?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of them obviously not playing as well as they have, and to their level. There's obviously an element of that, and Coello, and Esbrí and Diestro playing absolutely amazing. I mean, I think Paquito put it right in kind of an interview that he had with 2010 on Monday, where they asked him actually about how it is, you know, how can you beat Coello and Tapia? And he kind of said one of these things, which is basically Coello and Tapia have to have a very bad day and you have to have an incredible day. And I think that's what happened. Ultimately, it felt like, from a mental standpoint, I felt like they were quite mentally fatigued, and it almost seemed like they didn't want to fight for the match. I didn't see that passion that you normally see in Coello and in Tapia, and it just felt like they just felt like, mentally they weren't fresh. They kind of didn't know what to do, and that they just didn't have that motivation, it almost felt like. Which, I think it can be it's fair enough, right? I mean, especially them, that they are basically playing every single Sunday, every single day of the week. At some point, you're human. You don't want to be there, or if the match is maybe a bit tougher than you expected, you're kind of you're not up for it, and these things can happen. I think what's important is to see how they perform this week, which is obviously a more important tournament, and kind of alluding to this, I think a lot of the pairs that have been upset this week, they're probably kind of relieved that at least it was a P2 and it wasn't a major tournament, right? So we'll see how they turn up this week, because obviously it's a much more important tournament in Buenos Aires, a P1. So obviously the points now start getting definitely a bit more serious.
Yeah, interestingly, I've looked at the draw, and Esbrí and Diestro are or would face Chingalan very early on, which I think is quite interesting because obviously, I mean, we have seen a lot of times when a pair that does incredibly well loses in the first round of the next tournament because they're knackered, they're not used to have really deep or having really deep runs. But given that they were playing so well, I mean, who knows? I think it's going to depend also on the court speed. I don't really know what to expect. I think traditionally they haven't been that fast in Argentina, which
Yeah, they're
obviously can.
normally indoor as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, not that fast.
So obviously, I think that's good for Chingalan. I mean, not ideal for Coello Tapia, but then again, they are on Cardona and Augsburger's side, so maybe it is a good thing. I mean, it's interesting to. I think this is the first season, or one of the first seasons, where we see that pairs really kind of big specialists on certain surfaces, and depending on the tournaments, they kind of go one way or the other. But yeah, nonetheless, really, really looking forward to that tournament in Argentina starting today or tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. Gons, I think what we should talk about as well is Lebron's head loss and the massive, well, I wouldn't say it's a massive upset, but a potentially surprising result with them losing to Augsburger and Cardona in the quarterfinals. I mean, it was a 3-set match. It was tight, but I did feel that Stupa struggled a lot from having been inactive for a long time. And it just happened throughout the whole match that he left so many lobs that was
I'm
so
not sure LeBron bought that excuse.
No, he literally didn't. He literally didn't because,
He didn't.
yeah, I mean, on the benches, right? He went
God.
mental and he said, that's because you're thinking about that. You shouldn't be thinking about that. You should focus on your paddle. I mean, I don't know how I would react if
He said something like, well, if you actually stopped thinking and started playing paddle, maybe it wouldn't happen. I mean,
honestly, well, we've said this before. I think Stupa is going to handle his relationship with LeBron really well because he's so used to dealing with different personalities. But honestly, I think if it would have been any other player, we could have seen a really massive, heated argument on the bench. Imagine he says that to Paquito. I think Paquito would have killed him. And so, yeah, as I was saying, I do think that the kind of journey of the match was consistently that Stupa was performing very much under par, and he was leaving so many short lobs, which against Cardona and Augsburger is just pointless. And then slowly Lebrón was getting more and more frustrated, even though he did start off playing quite well and he was playing better than Stupa. But then towards the third set, I think he made so many mistakes. I mean, not as many as Stupa, but I think enough to think that it wasn't just Stupa's fault, in inverted commas. And I mean, we did see Cardona and Augsburger. I don't know whether you listened to these quotes, but when they were sat down during the changeovers, they were constantly saying, Stupa's having a bad day. I mean, let's play all the balls to him. So, hey, in fairness, we know that how tough it is when you get frozen out of a game. And, Lebrón being how emotional he is, he was going to struggle with that situation. But they won the second set, having lost the first one, and they kind of had the momentum. And then it's just as soon as Stupa played one or two short lobs, then he lost it again. And I just feel that was a big reason why they lost that match. I don't know whether you agree.
yeah, I mean, definitely, I would say kind of falls more on Stupa from a paddle point of view, or at least what happened on court. I mean, they just had so much trouble giving any sort of problems to Cardona and Augsburger on their serve. I mean, returning Stupa and Lebrón were horrible. If I'm not mistaken, in the broadcast, they mentioned how I think it was towards the end of the first set and beginning of the second set, like there was a 5 game span basically in a row where they didn't, it was all like to love, or they had won like 1 point or so, like on Augsburger's serve. So I think that just shows, I mean, if you're not able to challenge at all Cardona and Augsburger on their serve, I mean, it's just going to be impossible for you to take the match. And obviously, I think a lot of this falls down on Stupa and the fact that he was letting a lot of lobs short, which, as you mentioned, you can't really do against these guys. And yeah, I mean, on Lebron's side, I felt like we kind of got the full Lebron show. I mean, incredible encore. It was absolutely amazing. Single-handedly, almost, he kind of won the second set by himself. I mean, at some points, he was even like going all the way to Stupa's side to smash. I don't think I've ever seen that from a kind of right-handed, right-sided player going to the left side as like guys court and smashing from there. I mean, it was incredible. And you know how Lebrón as well, how good he is with the angles. I mean, the amount of shots that he can produce from any side of any point of the court, the spin, the speeds. I mean, he really masters every single stroke, and he showed it. But then on the flip side, you also get the Lebrón outside of the court, which was, I mean, it's it's a handful to deal with. I mean, fair play to Stupa for kind of being calmed about it. He even seemed like he was laughing at some point. I mean, like you said, if it was one of us and you're getting that sort of heat, I mean, I don't know what I would be doing, to be honest. Or at least how can, essentially it's just how can that be beneficial for the game, right? If you're getting that amount of pressure from your partner, how can you then go out there and perform at your best? But I mean, we know how LeBron is. I thought it was quite funny. I don't know if you've seen, but they're now in Argentina, and Pozzoni kind of shared a video on Instagram or something where they're sitting at a dinner table with the team, and Lebrón is kind of, he's separated, and he was kind of mentioning, he's going through all the players, and he's mentioning, oh, there's Lebrón, he's grounded, like whatever. So, it kind of seems like they've taken it lightly. I mean, I'm sure that they spoke about it, or at least for now. But we'll see how it goes. I mean, I still think that, they played a decent match, obviously managed to take it to a third set. But it's going to be tough. I mean, I can't wait for them to play against Cardona and Augsburger again, because I want to see just the benches and how the reaction will be this time.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of Lebron's frustration was because Stupa wasn't playing well. And I understand that. He was also, Stupa's normally such a confident player. I mean, he doesn't care about making unforced errors as long as his balance is more positive than negative. And Stupa wasn't even going for smashes. And when he did, I mean, he went for 12 and he was successful in 2 of them. So yeah, really, really bad game from him. But I think the other reason why Lebrón was so frustrated is because they were losing to one of the other not kind of big pairs. So if they lose to Coello and Tapia or even Chingalan, it's like, okay, they're ranked higher than us. I understand it. But I don't think he should be thinking that way, because Cardona and Augsburger have now caused upsets across all the top pairs. So he should try to be more patient, but I know it's more easily said than done. And yeah, I mean, one thing I would like to say is I do think that Stupa and Lebrón are being super unfortunate with the draws, because at the start of the season, they were having to face Coello and Tapia in the semis and then Chingalan in the final pretty much throughout. And now they're always in on Cardona and Augsburger and Coello and Tapia's side, which means that they basically have to beat all the best players in the world to win a tournament, which we know how hard it is. And this is not taking anything away from Chingalan, but they're currently seeing the flip side of the coin. I really do. I mean, I think this is good for the race. This is going to make Tapia and Coello's kind of comeback after, suffering a shock upset in Paraguay tougher. So it'll be interesting to watch. And it could make the race more interesting if Coello and Tapia suddenly lose again to one of the other pairs, or one of the top pairs, or against any of the other pairs. But I would want to see Chingalan face, tougher draws as well, because I think that would give me a very clear picture of whether they are indeed as solid as they seem, because they're basically making the final week in, week out, or whether, okay, they've had easy draws, in inverted commas, but they've had to win one tough match or 2 tough matches throughout a whole tournament. Yeah.
No, it's like you said, it's just kind of hard to gauge their true level right now, because they're not having to face the 3 best pairs essentially out there. They're maybe facing one of them, and up until now, they've always been facing Coello and Tapia, and they've lost every time. So that's kind of why, we've had all these discussions around, does Galán need more help? Is Chingotto enough? All of these things, right? Because sure, they've been really, they've only been facing one of the kind of most informed pairs, and they've always lost. Now, this is the case where the first time that they beat Cardona and Augsburger, who are, like we said, we think that they're probably the 4th best pair at the moment. So fair play to them. But, they haven't gone through a tournament where they're potentially facing Cardona and Augsburger in quarterfinals, and then Lebrón and Stupa in the semis, and then they face Coello and Tapia in the final, right? Obviously, if they did that, then you're like, yeah, okay, these guys are definitely, the way they've been playing, it's definitely the level that they are right now. But I mean, like I mentioned in the beginning, you can only play what's in front of you. And to be fair, like, really good on them that they've been able to be this consistent. And also, like I also mentioned in the beginning, I mean, it's not like they're having trouble beating these pairs. They're absolutely taking them apart. Even Teo and Dineno, I would argue, are probably the fifth best pair right now. I mean, I think that they're showing like quite a good level. They're beating them quite comfortably as well. So we'll see. But it's true that I would say it's like slightly hard to really gauge what their true level is right now.
I mean, and this is to emphasize, this is whether their true level is enough to be back at their prime and challenge for the number one spot. We know they're the second best pair.
Yeah, exactly.
We know that they're so consistent, but it's whether they're back to their prime. I mean, Galán, to be honest, we said this, Gons, when we were talking about the tournament online. I mean, his performance in the semi-finals against Tello and Dineno, he was an absolute machine. I mean, one of the best performances I've seen on his behalf, full stop. And then Chingotto, I think, is just really going back to his kind of basics as per se. I know he was very successful with his smashing in the final, and he was, proficient with it. But throughout the tournament, I just thought that he was just very solid, very, very solid, and generating the spaces and the opportunities for Galán to come in and finish the point. And I think, from my, very humble opinion, that's what they need to focus on, is on what they're good at, rather than try to, too many things, or Galán try to take too much of the weight of their pair. I think that's what my opinion is. And I think that's what's currently helping them, reach finals, win 3 tournaments this season, etc.
Yeah, no, 100%. And maybe one last thing I did want to discuss with you with Cardona and Augsburger, which I think is quite an interesting topic for the future. They're obviously becoming, main players on kind of the upper echelon of kind of the best paddle players. But my question to you is, do you think they'll stay together? Because it feels like they've got a real project on their hands and that can have huge potential. But at the same time, I feel like they're becoming such attractive players for the top ranked players. So, I mean, I know we've discussed in the past, for example, Galán and Cardona potentially, but I'm thinking even someone like, let's say, Lebrón calls Augsburger, right? If he's like not happy with how Stupa's performing, I mean, I think that could be insane. So it's interesting because, it's kind of one of those pairs where you're like, damn, like these guys, if they stay like 3-4 years together, like they could, they can cause some serious damage. But at the same time, will they give themselves a chance? Do you think they should?
It's hard to say. I think that they should, but I think they both have one incredibly interesting option that could make them look elsewhere. You mentioned Lebrón for Augsburger. Definitely agree. I don't know whether you saw this, but when they did the handshake after the game, Lebrón was actually kind of quite nice and amicable with Augsburger. And then with Cardona, it was just a quick high five. I wonder whether knowing
I think
Lebrón,
they get along super well.
Maybe it was like, hey, well done, mate. You're great. I'll give you a call in a few months. But I think that would be an incredibly interesting option for Augsburger. And then on the flip side, I think Cardona, if he receives a call from Galán, I mean, I think that's, I think they would both be better partnerships than the current. Well, I mean, Cardona, Galán, definitely, because obviously Galán is an upgrade compared to Augsburger. And then Lebrón Augsburger versus Cardona Augsburger. I mean, I just think that Lebrón looks very close to being back to his best, to be honest, ignoring these kind of mental slip-ups and issues. And I do think that pair would do really, really well. I think they should stick together, but I would understand it if they looked towards those respective options. I think anything else, I don't think it would be an improvement, to be honest.
No, I would agree. I mean, I do hope that they kind of are patient and that they stick together because, like I said, I think they have huge potential. I think that they can essentially become the next Coello Tapia. I mean, from a talent perspective, they definitely can do. And now they're showing that they're also able to win kind of the very best players, and they just need obviously to brush up a couple of things, but they've showed that they can make deep runs in tournaments and win. So I mean, hopefully they do give themselves a chance, even though yeah, obviously it's hard, and if you do get a call from one of the players that we were just mentioning, obviously it's going to be very, very tempting.
Yeah, and I think the point situation is going to be very important, like how much of a points gap they can make up this season.
Right.
if they start facing easier draws, which is also going to help them a lot from, you know, a results perspective, then they're going to be more inclined to sticking together. But if the point situation isn't as favorable, then they're probably more inclined to look further up the table. But I do think, given their results this season, I think they probably do agree with our analysis. I don't think there's that many players that would, you know, actually make them part ways.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that probably brings us to the end of the episode. Great that Paddle's back. I mean, really enjoyed this chat, and I hope all our audience and listeners as well have enjoyed it. So, obviously, guys, do leave a comment and a like, and kind of give us your thoughts about what you thought of all the upsets in Asunción, because obviously we didn't talk about some other upsets like Coqui and Yanguas, which is also surprising given that they've been incredibly consistent, or Paquito and Berga, for example. So
Iván Garrido as well.
they're gonna be it's gonna be really interesting how they perform this tournament, because I mean now I think they have to start pulling in results, or it's gonna be a short-lived project. But anyways, do stay tuned for another tournament, and this one is in Buenos Aires, obviously Argentina. It's an incredible place for paddle, and I'm sure it's gonna be amazing out there with all the fans. So do stay tuned. And Hugo, it's been a pleasure as always.
Pleasure, Gons. Have a great week, guys. Catch you soon.